Mr. President,
the Majority Leader.
On AUMF first. Mr. President, 2 decades after the start of the Iraq War, the Senate this week debates legislation to repeal the authority that commenced the war to begin with. By a large vote, 67 to 28, the Senate yesterday sent a clear message that the time has come to repeal the AUMFs of 2002 and 1990. At this point, repealing the Iraq AUMFs in the Senate is not a matter of if, but rather of when. I hope, given such strong bipartisan vote yesterday, we can move quickly. There should be no needless delay or dilatory tactics on something the majority of senators support. We're in the process of negotiating amendments. We want to be reasonable, but this process is going to proceed as quickly as it can. Allowing these AUMFs to remain on the books is just asking for a future administration to abuse them and, God forbid, bumble us into a new conflict in the Middle East. War powers belong in the hands of Congress, and we should use and exert that authority by bringing these AUMFs to a close. It's my hope that both sides can reach an agreement to accelerate this process very soon. In the meantime, once again, thanks, kudos to Senators Kaine and Young, Chairman Menendez and Risch, and Ranking Member Risch, and all of the co-sponsors, there are many, of this legislation. Now on trains. After last month's terrible derailment in East Palestine, Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw has a chance today to prove before the Senate Commerce Committee that his company is ready to fix the damage they have created. During this testimony, I hope Mr. Shaw will offer some candid answers to a number of very troubling questions. For example, if Mr. Shaw and rail executives truly care about safety, why did they spend years lobbying the Republican administration to claw away at regulations intended to keep people safe? What is Norfolk Southern doing to prevent future accidents like the one in East Palestine? And God forbid another one happens, how will Norfolk Southern ensure communities get the resources they need? I also want to hear Mr. Shaw explain why his company has engorged itself with stock buybacks when that money could have been spent on safety. Listen to this. Norfolk Southern has more than doubled the amount they spent on stock buybacks in the 5 years after the Trump tax law compared to the 5 years before it. In the same period, they cut jobs by thousands and lowered capital investments by billions. How is that justifiable? I understand that NTSB Chair Hamady is offering testimony as well. I hope we hear from her that the NTSB is ready to conduct a full investigation, not just into Norfolk Southern, but into all Class I freight rail companies, as I have asked her to do. Such an examination could shed light on the number of rail accidents, if they occurred in populated areas, which toxic chemicals were released. A full NTSB investigation could tell us which of these accidents occurred because the tracks were severely degraded or poorly designed. And a full investigation from the NTSB could tell us which negligent rail company policies contributed to the 2,700 deaths in recent years, and if any of these could have been prevented. The Senate deserves explanations. Americans in communities like East Palestine want answers. I hope today's hearing provides some so we can prevent rail disasters like the one in Ohio from happening again. Now, on House Republican comments at their retreat on debt ceiling. Undermining the full faith and credit of the United States is never a good idea. But in the aftermath of a bank collapse, it is supremely reckless. But that's precisely what some House Republicans, including the very chairman of the House Budget Committee, are doing right now. During House Republicans' annual retreat, House Budget Committee and other hard right-wingers said, quote, now is the best time to double down on debt ceiling brinkmanship, as news of SVB's collapse remains front of mind. That is reckless and truly clueless. It's both, reckless and clueless. Instead of calling for calm, House Republicans are sowing chaos by threatening default at a time when banks need stability. Again, instead of calling for calm, House Republicans are sowing chaos by threatening default at a time when banks need stability. It goes to show you how fringe and unserious the House GOP conference has become. Our Republican colleagues should remember that it was poor supervision and a rush under Trump to deregulate that caused the banking crisis. Banks that are well managed are not in crisis, even though they're dealing with the same macroeconomic conditions as everyone else. So what Republicans are saying is not only ridiculous and false, but dangerous. If you're a small business owner worried about keeping the lights on and paying your employees, what are you supposed to think when Republicans threaten default at a time like this with markets already on edge? If you're near retirement and have spent your whole life setting aside a little in order to retire with dignity, how would you feel if Republicans threatened your life savings by risking default? The right answer is for Republicans in the House to stop saber-rattling, drop the hostage-taking and brinksmanship, and work together, in a bipartisan way, to extend the debt ceiling without strings attached, without brinksmanship, without hostage-taking. But that will only happen once Republicans stop ducking from the American people and show us their plan. Republicans, show us your plan. Today's March 22nd. The debt ceiling date is getting closer and closer. Speaker McCarthy, it's been long enough. Where's your plan? Your Congress says it wants cuts. They've threatened default unless they get their cuts. So where's the plan? Instead of making radical comments that threaten even more financial turmoil, Republicans should focus more on solving the debt crisis by working with Democrats to ensure a default never occurs. Finally, Mr. President, yesterday we learned the sad news of the passing of one of the greatest New York Knicks legends of all times, the captain, Willis Reed. You can't write the story of the New York Knicks or the NBA without mentioning Willis Reed. He was a giant on and off the court, a ferocious competitor, a class act, and above all, a leader of leaders. In Game 7 of the 1970 NBA Finals, I so well remember it. Willis Reed authored one of the most memorable moments in sports history by hobbling out of the tunnel and walking onto the court minutes before the tip-off. That night, he gave a legendary performance against the Lakers while leading his team to one of 2 Knicks titles. We hope maybe it'll happen again soon. Willis Reed embodied what it meant to be a Knick, a New Yorker, a champion, and a legend. Our thoughts are with his family, friends, and teammates. May he rest in peace. And a little bit of good news. Today, we, the 118th Congress, will confirm President Biden's 118th judge. The 118th Congress will confirm President Biden's 118th judge. As you know, we have confirmed more judges at this point in a president's term than any of the previous 3 administrations. We are proud of how far we have come, and we're just getting started. I yield the floor.